Loneliness sold as sex. Escape sold as fun. Isolation sold as play. Ads sold as role models. Numbness sold as happiness. Likes sold as friendship. Addiction sold as relaxation. Distraction sold as downtime. Emptiness sold as joy. We're not addicted to these things. We're addicted to the promises that these things give us. But the truth is, this is at the cost of your brain and nervous system. And those promises, they're all lies. The most important thing you can ever know about humans is that we're always moving away from pain and we're always moving towards pleasure. The natural reward system of the brain is built around eating, drinking, sex, and connection. Some days you might feel like your brain is about to explode, but it's not your fault. Your brain is trying to survive a technological, digital storm. We were never meant to deal with this much stuff. Your brain is getting flooded with dopamine, and it's not there to nourish your nervous system, it's there to hijack your nervous system. Stick around because I'm going to talk about 4 of the most common addictions that people have and what the science is behind those addictions, what it is that keeps us returning to them. And at the end of the video, I'll give you the answer to deal with all of these dopamine hijackers. Addiction is defined by a compulsive engagement or behavior that keeps you returning to something despite all of the negative consequences. Most people think that dopamine is the happy feel-good chemical. And although it has some connection with us feeling good, it's a chemical that makes us feel motivated. It gives us that feeling of wanting more. It's the feeling of novelty, something different coming into our world. But it's this craving that keeps us stuck, and even sometimes we're spiraling with it. The nervous system moves between 3 core states. State number 1, hyperarousal. This is our fight and flight mode. State number 2, hypoarousal. This can be low mood or depression. And then state number 3, this is the green zone. This is where we feel connected, we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel seen, we feel heard. And what happens when the nervous system is stuck in survival is that people cling to anything that gives them those feelings. Because ultimately the nervous system is always wanting to feel at home. So anything that can give you that feeling as a human being is something that you'll want more of in your life. But what happens when we take these substances, we release dopamine that could be 10 times as much as a natural dopamine release. And then over time we become desensitized. We need to take more of whatever we're taking to get back to a regular baseline. And what we once took as something to elevate our mood begins to be a coping mechanism, something that you can't live without to get by. So let's take a look at 4 things that can increase our dopamine hits over 10 times as much. These are natural things which are hijacking our brain. Number 1, social media. If you've ever seen The Social Dilemma, the film on Netflix, you'll see just how much the algorithms are hijacking our brains. What happens when we scroll? We're looking for dopamine spikes. We're looking for the possibility of likes, of comments, of validation, which helps us feel like we're seen, heard, like we fit in with the crowd. Dopamine loves surprise, and that endless scrolling, that mindless scroll is just like gambling. You can't resist it, so you keep going. And eventually this leads to dopamine burnout. With the constant spikes, you become desensitized and you're seeking more and more hits just to feel okay. And this can lead to numbness and overwhelm, what I call functional freeze. Addiction number 2, the clubbing trap. So when we're growing up, between the ages of about 14 and 24, the brain is seeking a sense of connection, a sense of validation, a sense of feeling like it belongs. And this is down to our ancestors, how they survived years and years ago. And this is embedded in our nervous system. And when we're between the ages of 14 and 24, this is heightened. Okay, so we're really looking for that validation and that acceptance. And I came from an academic family. They were very high achieving academically, and I was more of a creative soul. I had the sense that I didn't fit in there, and I sought that sense of belonging from a peer group which was outside of my family. Then I began smoking and taking drugs to fit in with that peer group, and it became a method of escapism after some time. So what the clubbing industry does, it makes you think that it's good to burn the candle at both ends, to work really hard and then party and go out really hard. You know, all the alcohol that people drink, the drugs that they take, can really affect their nervous system and leave them dysregulated. And they don't realize they're doing this. A period of years passes, and then all of a sudden they think to themselves, something has got to change here. And that was me, okay, that was me. But mine went on for a long, long time. When I was taking drugs and drinking, I was using it as a coping mechanism when I moved onwards to being a young adult and an adult. And it felt like I needed those drugs and that drink just to get by. I haven't been a raving drug addict, but I've smoked pot and I've drank alcohol to excess, and it did affect my life. Whether I say I'm an addict or not, I don't know. Or whether I say I have been an addict rather, I'm not so sure. But who defines what an addict is? You can think of things like the gym. You know, people can use the gym excessively. They can eat fast food excessively. They scroll excessively. They shop excessively. They take drugs and they drink excessively. We have probably all had an addiction at some point, yet it was very stigmatized until the 1960s, having addictions, because it was seen as something that was very much a reflection of your character, like you were a weak person. However, with studies that have looked at the brain in great depth, they can see now that this is, it's a brain and nervous system problem. It's not a reflection of anyone's character at all. And at the root of it all, I know there's some drugs out there on the market that can increase serotonin to help you out of these dips that you're in, and that's great if it does. But it's important that we get to the root cause. And the root cause of most things is that people don't feel valued, they don't feel loved, they don't feel connected, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard. So when we can explore those gaps in our lives, then we can replace these short-term dopamine hits with something else, which I'll move on to later on. And not all drugs are bad. There are some studies on MDMA and studies on LSD, which has shown that these drugs are very beneficial for human beings because they can strip away all of the unnecessary layers that we seem to carry on our shoulders these days. In terms of ecstasy, it gives you that feeling of closeness to a group of people. It triggers massive releases of serotonin and dopamine, so you get that feeling of reward, you get that feeling of happiness. That's why it's called ecstasy. And the similar studies that have shown the psychological benefits on people with PTSD with both MDMA and LSD. And there's things like microdosing that are becoming more mainstream now that are really helping people with their mental health. So it's important that we can separate and look at the person that's having these problems with more of a holistic approach and more of an integrative approach. So integrative medicine means a combination of natural medicine, and perhaps when all areas have been explored in that respect, then you could go to something from the pharmaceutical cabinet. However, it's the natural medicines that are used first, and the methods of reaching the root cause of what is driving people to chase these things. Addiction number 3. Porn. Okay, so I'm not someone that's had a raving porn habit, but I have looked on these sites at certain times in my life. And when I was a child, we had magazines on the top shelf of newsagents because it was pre-internet times. And in these magazines, you would see bare bodies and sexual positions and stories that would be in there. But there was never anything to the level that even children are watching these days, which is absolutely shocking. And it's messing with our brains. Now, when the internet first came around, within those first few years, I can remember going on porn sites then and having a look at what was there out of curiosity. And I was seeing these scenarios being played out. I thought they were a little bit raw from time to time. And then having revisited it in recent years, it is a playground for abuse, for breakdowns of family systems with stepdaughter, stepfather scenarios. There is a child kind of like schoolgirl section. That kind of stuff is horrific. And we are planting messages in our brains when we're watching that stuff that is okay. So what the porn does, and the porn industry, when you look into it, you know, it's a huge industry and it's controlled by the same group of people. It's so unhealthy for us because it's giving us these short dopamine hits of how we feel like when it's connected to another human being, which is completely disconnected with the reality of forming a relationship, with that feeling of closeness, with that feeling when somebody touches your arm, you know, that excitement if you've got some sexual chemistry between you. And because it's giving you so many dopamine hits, then you begin to seek out more extreme content to give you that high. And what happens in regular relationships with husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend is that they become boring because we feel like we should be getting those highs that we're watching from porn. Now, it does sound like I'm speaking like an expert, but I'm not here. I find this stuff a little bit stomach turning the last time I logged on to anything like that. And yeah, it's not something that I want to do to my brain. I don't want my brain to think that it's normal to be looking at that stuff as a reflection of what life is. Addiction number 4. It's the news. The news was never designed to keep you updated. It's designed to keep you stuck in fight and flight. There's a famous saying within the industry, if it bleeds, it leads, because the brain is always looking to survive. It can't look away from the death, the destruction. It's designed to keep you on high alert, so you're getting stuck in your fight and flight nervous system. And this negative news gives you dopamine spikes. So what happens then is you become desensitized and you're chasing that next hit. And this is why people can't stop watching the news. It's one after another story of things we've got no control over whatsoever. And the brain wasn't designed to know what's happening on the other side of the world and to deal with all of the death and destruction that comes with that. And this isn't saying that you don't care. It's about preserving your energy so that you're more functional and you have more energy for those around you that you care about, for those around you that you love. So saying no to the news isn't that you're disconnected and you don't care about what's going on. It's about putting yourself first. It's a self-care practice. And this just doesn't go for mainstream news. It also goes for alternative news. There are so many platforms now that are giving us a different view of what's happening in the world and who is actually running the show, that we can end up going down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And when we do, we get those dopamine hits just the same as we would from mainstream news. Even though they're things that aren't making us feel good, we're looking to be on the high alert in case anything goes wrong. And when you're doing this, you tend to actively seek out that negative news and you can find yourself stuck in a little bit of a ditch. So if you do want to do your own research, so that you can make an informed opinion about what's going on right now, then just make sure that you're coming back to things that regulate your nervous system so that you're not ending up feeling dysregulated. For years, I was chasing dopamine. I felt disconnected, I felt lonely, I had addictions. Looking good on the outside, I guess, but on the inside, I felt frozen, I felt disconnected, like I say. And when I felt like that, that's when I would move towards having a glass of wine on the evening, thinking it was a treat. But really, it was a coping mechanism. It was a coping mechanism that did get out of hand because I was drinking more than 3 units a week at one point. And it wasn't until my 40s that I discovered that my nervous system was dysregulated. And then I started practicing things like yoga nidra, and I cut back on the things that I was doing, feeling like I needed more to kind of like fix everything. And I started to relax a little bit more. I started to rest. I developed some boundaries where I put myself first, and I didn't come from that place of giving all the time. I just put the wall up basically, and it was a bit of a lonely time then in my life because certain people fell away, and then after that I began to invite new people into my life. So the story does have a happy ending there. So what's the answer to stopping this craving for dopamine? It's boredom. Boredom is the answer, and it's so boring. So I started walking in nature without music on. I started lying down in silence. I started meditating. I started practicing yoga nidra. And the more and more I was bored and able to sit with boredom without feeling like I had to grab something to eat, something to drink, a phone to scroll, anything else that you would go to if you were bored, I sat with boredom. I sat with stillness. And when you do that, it gives your body and your brain the opportunity to re-regulate. You're able to re-regulate your nervous system, and you're able to allow your dopamine to become more balanced rather than having these huge dopamine spikes from hour to hour in our waking state. The dopamine spikes that we were never ever meant to deal with. Our ancestors didn't deal with that much dopamine, and there was a time for their nervous systems to re-regulate. But in the modern world, we're not getting that time out. It's important now that with the rise of AI and technology in our lives, for ourselves and for our kids and grandkids, that we become more aware of what's going on in the brains, that we look at this with self-compassion, that we see ourselves as individuals that want to be seen, valued, heard. We want to feel like we belong. And we don't need substances to be able to feel like that. We can get that from each other. If you want to learn a little bit more about the nervous system and how you can regulate to feel more grounded and more content in your life without dopamine hits, then you can get in touch with me. Use the link below. You can book a free discovery call, and we can talk things over of how my coaching can help you. Thanks for watching.